I'm an atheist and a really skeptical person. I've never believed in the paranormal things, and I'm starting with this because I know that it can be hard to believe what I'm about to share with you guys. Well, in summer of 2017, my aunt sent me a photo. She and her boyfriend found this abandoned small village in Burgos, Spain, but they went there because he liked to take photos and whatnot, and that was his hobby. When they arrived there, they couldn't do this special effect with the fire that he wanted to do because of the weather, I guess, so he just took some pictures of this abandoned church. And this is the photo that my aunt sent me. Now, I can assure you guys that the photo is definitely not fake. I thought it was at first, but they really had no way to fake it. My aunt was in the back of the camera. The light came from a flashlight the guy was holding, and there's just no way that the shadow was one of them, and they were alone there. I had no explanation for this photo, and no one I know had, so I believed that this was some kind of illusion. The best way to explain it to myself was to go there and try to recreate the photo, to analyze the place because I couldn't believe it. And so I went to Spain that summer. My aunt and her boyfriend took me to this place, the abandoned village, and here's my photo. The guy started taking photos too, but he stopped after like 15 minutes and told us that we had to leave. In the car, he was dead silent and his expression was just weird. Me and my aunt were joking about him seeing a ghost or something, and eventually he said something like, "I'll see you two laughing when you see the photos." We arrived home and the guy took his shirt off for some reason, and there was a really big scratch. Well, not really a scratch, it was more like a cut if I'm being honest, on his chest and another one on his back, the same size. That honestly shocked all of us because we couldn't find any explanation for it. I don't have any pictures of the scratch because he didn't want to let me take one, but I have the pictures that we took that day. There was nothing strange at first, but he was sure that there was something, so I guess that he saw something there and thought that he saw it on the camera. Later on, he told us that he saw some woman dressed in white with her hair covering her face coming really close to him, and he felt his chest freezing or something like that. To be honest with you guys, I don't really believe that part because he just described the ghost in the movie The Ring, but I thought a lot about that and realized that a lot of people who have seen things like that, including my grandfather when the movie didn't even exist, describe something similar. A woman with her hair covering her face. And so, I don't really know what to think about this. After I got home, I told this story to everyone. My friend asked to see the photos that we took that day and observed something weird. Here are some of the photos that we took in order, seconds after seconds, and if you look at the missing brick in the building, you'll notice that in some of the photos, it's not missing. The reason could be the light, but I really don't think so. When I was 17, I made a dodgy decision in quitting school. Mainly this was due to my parents, my mum and stepdad, moving from Elizabethtown to New Albany, which honestly infuriated me, and I found it selfish for many reasons. New Albany had always depressed me, but when I visited, I was fully creeped out, but also kind of fascinated, I must admit. Everything was rotting and industrial, or rotting and Victorian, and events would transpire that would cause my dad, a military-based chef, to become disabled and force me to move in with my mum and my new stepdad. I promptly got a job and began sleeping in an upstairs room. There were many strange and sometimes terrifying things that would happen in the time that I lived in that city too. But an incident that kind of marked the beginning when I was still getting used to the city happened one night before I was supposed to go to work. We lived in one of the many older houses that were long, a bit crammed together, with an alley behind the houses for trash and vehicle garage access. I remember how these alleys just stank of garbage in the summertime. One of my sisters, Elizabeth, had complained several times of seeing shadows and hearing rushed footsteps in the street behind the house. We all only paid polite attention to her complaints, not taking her too seriously. But she was known for complaining a lot that she experienced paranormal incidents, and we assumed that this was just another one of them. We all kind of got annoyed because we were awakened several times during the night with her saying that she saw somebody lurking outside the fence or near the garage in the back alley. I had work the next day and was particularly irritated, ticking away the number of hours of sleep that I would get with each disturbance. Finally, I told her that I would sleep downstairs if it made her feel better. There were many windows in these old houses to let in the sun, so I reasoned that I would see the sentry light come on if somebody was lurking in any part of the yard on either side of the house. And well, I was wrong. I woke instead to a short series of bangs on the iron-wrought screen door, hard enough to rattle it and make the window shake. I got up, bleary and admittedly scared, but resigned to go look out the door's glass frame. My stepdad reached it before me. I was relieved because, well, he was an ex-Marine and scared of pretty much nothing, but I wanted to look brave around him, so I went to the door next to him. And a man stood in the doorway, shadowed due to the sentry light. He was somewhere in his 20s, I'd guess, had a neckbeard and a very haggard look despite wearing clothes that looked well kept. He was standing with a stillness that was honestly disturbing. Stepdad hollered a simple, "What?" at the man without actually opening the door. The man said nothing but raised his hand to his mouth, tilting an imaginary cup into his lips or something. We took this to mean that he wanted water and fetched him a glass quickly. He drank it without saying a word and then stood on the porch for several minutes until Stepdad just got impatient and said, "Man, it's 4 a.m. and we want to go to bed." The man's still face then broke into a pained grimace, so extreme that it was both comical and scary. In a horrible, deranged whine, too, he said, "I'm full of demons, and I ate my mum tonight." He then broke into a fit of just wheezing sobs. My stepdad said, "Listen, guy, you need to leave now, okay?" and slammed the door in the man's face. He called the cops as I watched the man walk into the middle of the road in front of the house and sit, arms over his knees. The cops came and talked to the man. They told us that he lived down the road and that everything was okay. But they told us really nothing other than that too, but that morning I checked the backyard and made sure the dogs were secure before I got ready for work. My sisters were also getting ready for school. As I was putting on my uniform, I heard one of my sisters scream. I ran to the kitchen where she was, which faced the backyard, and it was my older sister, Reno, and she pointed out and told me that she had watched the door leading into the garage open. And sure enough, it was open a head's width, after I'd just shut it and checked all the other doors and gates out back. The dogs were also going absolutely nuts, and it was just me and my sisters at this point, and the only weapon that I had was a cane sword that belonged to my grandfather. It was dull, but I still handed it to my sister, telling her that a good whack or a poke from it would still probably mess somebody up. She decided to follow me, maybe emboldened by the dog and our weapons. I opted to take its encasing, which was a hard piece of iron with a flared pommel where the blade fit in. We approached the garage, probably being stupid, and attempted to peer into the crack in the door. The lights inside were on, and we heard a loud bang from inside. I went forward, swinging the cane in as ruthless as a strike as I could muster, but only hitting the frame of the broken-down car inside. The door on the other side was open, and my dog took a chance to run out of it after the intruder. I looked behind me and saw the cane sword abandoned on the ground and guessed Reno had booked it back inside. After much searching, I found my dog terrorizing another dog behind a fence, and no sign of anybody the entire time I searched. We told our parents, but they just kind of dismissed everything. They said that I probably had forgotten to lock the door and it came open and that the mother eater wasn't really dangerous. They were more worried about the dog escaping and hurting somebody. We rarely ever actually saw the mother eater after that, and we stopped being scared and would laugh when he was brought up, joking about what he could have possibly meant by saying that he had eaten his mother. But our last encounter with him was years later. We found one day that he was walking up and down the road most of the day in July. But when it got dark, me and Elizabeth were sitting up just watching fruit baskets when we heard a series of, really loud moans. I sniggered and she pulled a disgusted face. We thought our parents were getting it on or something. until my stepfather came stampeding down the stairs, and the moans turned into screams that sounded like "no, no," just over and over again. Outside, there was a commotion of flashlights and many people, and we watched as two people came into our yard and seemed to be searching for something with flashlights. They ran back to the road as the police pulled up and gathered around the cop car. This incident was never explained to us, and the police just said that there was an incident, but we never heard of or saw the mother eater again after that, though plenty more definitely happened in New Albany, that's for sure. My hunch after all of this is that the guy attacked somebody at night when they were walking by or something. I don't know what he did to them, but maybe his whole spiel about eating his mother wasn't just a figment of his imagination. Small towns can just have some outright creepy stuff go down in them. I have 3 stories of my own experiences while in a small town surrounded by open plains and dense wilderness. I'll share the others in the near future if this one picks up. Although I can't really prove all of it, I hope that you'll understand that my 3 stories are very much real and, while not dramatic, still hold a lasting effect on me. So, I used to work retail for a sports company that also sold hunting equipment. We always kept the guns, the knives, the hatchets, and the machetes locked away. However, a customer is allowed to check them over before deciding to purchase it. In order to unlock the guns, we need to be certified, but with the knives, you just need to borrow the key from the manager on duty. It was near our closing time, and I was cleaning behind the counter when 2 people came in. I heard the cashier welcome them, and they came straight to me. They were both sketchy looking, I must admit. My small town has an issue with drug addicts, and these 2 definitely looked the part. They were thin, had heavy shadows around their sunken eyes. They were twitchy and wore nasty clothes that just kind of hung off of them. They were also covered in tattoos, which isn't a problem, but I noticed the lady had the most nasty looking lightning bolt on one of her cheeks, and I figured that it was probably a cover-up. But they took a great interest in the large knives and wanted to look over each one. The guy was telling me about how their houses recently got raided by the police and that they stole their knife collection and wanted to rebuild it. I suggested that they took them because there's a legal limit to the size of knives without a license. He shook his head and told me that none of them would be on the legal limit. And after several minutes, the guy just suddenly says their bus is waiting on them, even though he never checked a watch and there's no clocks in the store. And the 2 just leave and we were able to close. That night I get home and I'm telling my wife the same story. After looking at my phone and switching it to Facebook, I see an article pop up. The article was dated to just a few hours ago and had a picture of that same lady with the lightning bolt tattoo. And the article talked about how she stabbed her husband or boyfriend, I can't remember, after an argument. I didn't read the whole article then, but I do believe that she killed him, and it honestly freaked me out that I very nearly sold them a potential murder weapon. This happened about 15 years ago. At the time, I was dating around and I had a few creepy encounters during that time, but this guy takes the cake. He was an acquaintance that my brother had met at a bar a few times and was showing around the local area because he was new to the country. My brother set us up because he was apparently desperate for a girlfriend, and I guess I was pretty desperate too because we went on a date together. That date was probably the worst first date that I've ever been on as well. I showed up at the restaurant that we were meeting at. He was late, which isn't a huge deal, so I let it slip and we went to sit down. To be honest, I knew from the start that I wasn't really attracted to him, but I thought I would be polite and see if we had a nice night. He started off politely too. He held the door for me, pulled my seat out. It wasn't really necessary, but it was nice anyway. Then, when we were sitting down waiting for someone to come and take our orders, I was reading the menu and he started talking about how much his fiancée would have liked this place. That one definitely took me by surprise, and naturally I asked about his fiancée. He revealed that he had had a fiancée before moving over here, but he had just left her to move to another country. I asked why they had broken up, and he said that they'd never really broken up as such, but he got fed up of her nagging him about various things and just moved away. I really didn't know what to say after that, so I changed the subject and started asking him more about himself and where he used to live. He wasn't really very forthcoming, but eventually our waiter turned up and started talking to us. To clarify for the next part too, our waiter was a man of colour and he had an unusual accent for our area. So my date stares blankly at him for a while, then turns to me and says, "Do you understand this guy?" I said yes, I could understand him before telling him our orders, and after he left, my lovely date continued to shock me. He said, "Yeah, I wouldn't normally leave ordering to the lady, but the brown guy talked really weirdly and I just didn't get it." Wow, way to tell me that you're a racist and a sexist in one breath, dude. Again though, I was speechless for a few moments before I actually got angry with him. I don't remember exactly what I said. It was something along the lines of, well, I'm not a lady, so I can order for myself just fine, thanks. And why make racial remarks like that? And then he got annoyed with me and told me that he wasn't being racist. He just wasn't used to that kind of person where he was from. I pointed out that he wouldn't have met me if he just stuck to people that he was used to in his own country. He did calm down after that and told me that he wouldn't want that because he's glad that he met me. Honestly, too, I found that a little weird given that I didn't see any way to say that this date was going well and he didn't know me very well at all. But I decided that since we had ordered, I should stay, get my meal, and try to redeem the evening before I leave and never see this man ever again. So I answered some of his questions about me, basic getting to know me and small talk stuff for the most part, but then started on about my previous dates, if I was a virgin, whether I would be willing to wait until marriage and then be submissive to my husband or not. And it was at this point that I realized that I was most likely on a date with a religious bigot, hence the misogyny, weird attitude to sexual stuff, and all his other close-minded crap. So I settled for a none of your business, now I need to leave. I checked the prices on the menu, left my money for half of the food, plus a tip on the table, and I got up to leave. He said he didn't see why I was being unreasonable with him, as though this had been a normal date. But then he told me that I couldn't expect him to take my money because that was an insult to him. Fine, dude, you want to pay for a meal that's not getting eaten? You pay for it. I'm not that mad about spending my money that I'll stop you. So I took my money back and I just walked straight out. I just assumed that yes, it was an awful evening, but I wouldn't have to see him again. I wasn't even back to my house, though, when my brother started texting me, asking where I was because my date had called him in tears, saying that I'd gone off for no reason and he didn't know where I was or what to do. But thankfully, my brother was pretty calm about it and assumed that I had left for a reason. I explained everything to him and he was pretty surprised too. After that night, we both tried to cut contact, though. My brother stopped meeting up with the guy and we both blocked the Facebook account that we had for him too. But my brother also blocked his number because he would just not stop texting him, asking about me, alternating between being really worried about me to saying that he hoped that I dropped dead. Then, he started making endless different accounts on social media to harass me. He told my brother that he didn't know why we weren't talking to him. He posted a bunch of just weird posts describing me in detail before going on to call me a lot of horrible names. We kept blocking them though and trying to move on. But then, the harassment got worse. He either found me and followed me at some point, or got my address from a friend and turned up one day, standing around outside my house, asking to come in and speak to me. When I refused to let him in, he grabbed my arm to prevent me from going in either and started to tell me that he didn't want to let me go because I would never find a man who would love me like he did, and that if I walked away from him again, that I would regret it one day when I was old and lonely. He went on and on like this for ages and ages while I tried to pull my arm away from him before I just got fed up of this and yelled at him to get off me and leave me alone, and then kicked him in the shin. He let go of my arm but cursed at me and said that I was being ungrateful to him, but I took my opportunity to run inside and I locked my door. He started banging on my door though, then trying to push it inwards. I was getting both upset by this man and just super fed up of his presence in my life, so at this point, I grabbed my phone and called the police, telling them that someone was trying to get into my house. I was told that someone would be there soon, but 20 to 30 minutes later, and there was no sign of them anywhere, and I was getting quite upset because this man was forcing my door open now, and I thought the lock was going to break soon, so I called my brother, who lives nearby, just because I knew that he would come, even though I wasn't sure if he would be able to help that much. But about 15 minutes later, my brother turns up, and after a brief conversation, I didn't quite hear outside, and the pressure was gone off of the door. I waited a few minutes and then texted my brother to see what was going on and if it would be alright to look outside now. But he didn't reply, and the next thing I heard was the police turning up. I went out to see what was going on. Apparently, after my initial call, they had received another call from a neighbor saying that there were two men fighting on my lawn. I guessed that this was my brother and the guy, since my brother looked out of breath and pretty shook up when the guy wasn't around anymore. My brother explained to the police that he had tried to stop the man getting into my house and then the man had hit him. I told my side of the story, and some of the other neighbors were asked what they had seen and were able to tell them about his attempts to get in. Plus, there were marks on the outer side of the door where he had tried to repeatedly get in as well. And the police went to look for him, and a few weeks afterward I was called and told that they thought that they had found him, but when they wanted me to look at the suspect person, it wasn't the same man. I didn't hear anything else after that, and I really don't know what happened to him. I didn't see him again, and so I'm probably safe after 15 years. But regardless, I don't ever want to see that guy again.